In the United States of America, we hear a lot about STEM. STEM workers use their knowledge of science, technology, engineering, or math to try to understand how the world works and to solve problems. There is a constant demand for people with these skill sets to fill jobs. Some say they are the best jobs if you actually want to retire early. Here's the catch. Throughout the last 15 years, the area has been pushed to no end is technology, specifically in the field of information technology. Who would have thought a field that holds the pocket protector eyeglass wearing viewed as nerds industry would actually be a hip, lucrative, and heavily integrated part of our daily lives? Sounds like a dream job or career, huh? Yes, it can be, and should be. Here's the thing though. Since the 1980s, many of the tech companies are still creating less inclusive environments, keeping it insular to those that look like them. Why are blacks being kept out of tech? According to a LA Times ad, the numbers revealed an industry dominated by white and Asian men. Of nearly 50,000 employees at Google, 83% were men, 60% white, and 30% Asian. Just 2.9% were Latino, and 1.9% were black. I bet you did not know that a 1 percentage point move toward representative diversity creates a 3% increase in income for the IT industry. That's about $400 billion. Tonight's guests are nothing short of brilliant. They are both leaders in an industry that is growing by leaps and bounds, the industry of information technology. They are here to engage our audience with career and life experiences that younger entrants can reference when crafting and moving into their own paths of their own success. Eric Lee, an executive information technology leader in the banking industry. Clifford Stokes Jr., Director of Information Security in the higher education industry. Thank you so much tonight, gentlemen, for coming by and engaging with our guest. We appreciate having you. Tonight's contributor is Ken French.
Thank you for having me. It's so nice to meet both of you guys. Can't wait to talk to you.
Okay, let's jump in. Tell us about your careers. Let's start with Eric. Tell us about your careers and how'd you get into IT? What made you get into information technology? What school you went to?
Sure. So I'm one of the ancient guys around that started in IT when IT wasn't IT, right? So I graduated high school in the 80s, early 80s. And that's when, I don't know if you call it the IT industry, but the computer industry was just starting to spin up, right? IBM came out with their personal computer, Commodore 64s, the Mac, little Apple box. That was way back then. That was fancy stuff back then. And I got my first start in high school when I was actually programming cards and putting the cards to the card reader in Fortran and those sorts of things. And that's what really piqued my interest. I mean, I went to a technical high school. Baltimore Polytechnic in Baltimore, go engineer. And from there, I decided I'm one of the few, I think, one of the rare guys that actually went into the field and stayed in for my entire career. So starting out at Hopkins, I was a double E major because they didn't have computer science. It was double E and computer science. And then I actually went on to get my master's at Georgia Tech right away. And we can get more into, I know we'll get more into that reason. I can get some more reasons into that later. And then eventually down the road, I jumped into an MBA at night. So that was my entrance into the field. And then I've worked over a number of different industries. You mentioned fintech, also medical, telecom, all coming up through as IT evolved into what we know now. So, but that interest was peaked in high school, actually.
Okay, awesome. And how about you, Clifford?
My parents got me an Apple IIe when I was in high school, and that just and watching my dad take it apart after it had a power spike in it and replace one of the chips. it piqued my interest at that point. Went to high school, took a programming class, really enjoyed it. Went to college, started off college with going in the field of engineering, and then looked at the math curriculum and was like, Daddy, I don't know if I could do this. And I talked with my parents and my mom and dad both. And my dad basically said, get a degree in computers and you'll always be able to find a job.
Exactly.
That is the wave of the future. And that's what I did. I got a bachelor's in computer information systems, and haven't looked back since. Went to work for state government. I've got about 21 years in state government working for multiple different agencies, 12 of them in law enforcement doing cybercrime investigations, where I did a lot of specialized forensic work and received training at federal organizations, and just loved it. And then I turned my focus into working on information security and have worked at data centers with 30,000+ servers, and just really have enjoyed working in this field. So from information technology to information security and cybersecurity, and it's the wave. It's the wave.
Gotcha. So to both of you, this is a question to both of you guys. What during your career prepared you for where you are right now in your career?
That's a great question. I think it's a combination of a lot of different things. So, but I'll usually narrow down to one or a couple. I think one of the things, someone gave me great advice when I started out, and they said to be a sponge. Early in your career, you don't know where you're going to head, right? So you should get as much from that company as that company is getting from you. So while you're there, make connections, make networking opportunities happen. Learn as much as you can about technology, about the business, and dive in and learn as much as you can, because that's going to be springboard you onto your next opportunity, right? Because it's gone are the days where people stay at their same place for 30 years, or if they do, they change within that career, right? You're not staying in the same position. Even if you Clifford, I think like you said, you're at the state. Even with the state, you're moving around into different areas, right? So you may start out in one area and up in security. I think the second thing is, if you can, diversify, right, within the different types of jobs. If it means jumping to another company, and jump for the right reason. It's a lot of times we jump for money or something like that. It's jump for the right reason. And I think if you have that diversity, sometimes you add more to that to the job and to the company that you're working for. And then one of the big things, I think this is the thing that this is the coup de grace, I guess, is understand why you're doing something or why the company is doing something, and not just how you're doing something. Results matter. CEOs look for results. They don't care how you got there. They're looking for bottom line. I had this release on time, or I was able to meet my SLAs, or if that's not something that hits the bottom line, it's nice, but it's just window dressing. Mm-hmm. And that, I think, knowing, and that's why I went back and got the MBA, to understand beyond the technology part of doing delivery and doing coding and the rest of it. Why am I doing this? It's, I worked in a medical company that made medical devices. They said inventory turns. We got to get our inventory turns down or up, whichever. I can't remember which one it was, but I said, I don't even know what that means. How can I influence that as a developer, right? So I think those are three of the things I think that really helped in propelling me to where I am now.
Okay. How about you, Clifford?
Everything that I've done kind of has prepared me and just prepares me for the next level or the next position that I'm growing or going into. Well, one of the things, just like Eric mentioned, learn as much as you can, absorb everything. I tell a lot of young people when I go speak to the technology classes and students, I say, you need to understand what that business is doing, what that organization's mission is, what is their strategic plan. Once you identify that strategic plan, you identify how the things that you are doing impact each of those areas, and you outline it, you highlight it, and you show them what is their return on investment, because technology touches everything in an organization. At a university, technology is everywhere. This particular college or this particular department is only focused on their students and their particular subject matter. Whereas IT supports them, they support the administrative office, they support all the other colleges and other departments. Same thing with a business organization. IT touches everything and supports everything. But if you cannot articulate what it is that you are doing or why you need this $1 million system or this cloud-based solution, and how it's going to benefit the business side of the organization, then you are an expense. A lot of high-level executives will look at you as that. Those are the type of things that I've learned over the years when I was in the law enforcement agency. And again, I said I've been in state government. I identified what I needed to do to articulate to get to them to get training, to get specialized training, and to get certifications. All certifications that I have, there's only 2 of them, but they're 2 big ones. I was able to get my employer to pay for them because I was able to articulate the need for my position to have those. And they were things that benefited me. They increased my brand level, so to speak. And that's one of the things that people in this field need to understand. It's always changing. So you always have to identify what is the next thing on the horizon that you need to be positioning yourself for. With the certifications, I look at the federal government a lot of times. The federal government has a framework that they've identified for technology specialists and experts. If you look at those things, it's just a matter of time before the private sector starts moving in that direction because they create the standard, so to speak. And the funny thing is the private sector takes their thing and makes it much better because they have more funding. Limited by budget, such as government organizations are.
Okay.
So, but everything, every little thing, I joked at one time that I was working in the law enforcement agency, and I said, man, I've been there 10 years too long. I should have left and moved on. But then I thought about it, but I wouldn't have done all these other things that have prepared me or made me more well-rounded to do things that I do now.
Gotcha. Okay. And I mean, what's great about the descriptions you guys gave, it helps the audience understand your background, and because we're going to go into a different world now with a discussion about how can we get more people like yourselves in some of the big tech companies and even small tech companies, and why they're not hiring people like yourselves. Okay, so to start with, an LA Times article. A number of Black tech professionals agree that the industry's reliance on personal relationships to grant access and opportunity is partly to blame, producing a network effect that militates against Black and Latino inclusion. A managing partner of Kindred Ventures said that the industry's reliance on personal relationships perpetuates a system of gatekeeping that is almost designed to keep investors like him out. Now, we bring up the investor aspect because of venture capitalists, and for IT, venture capitalism is a major proponent for it to be successful. Let's chat about the industry and its inability to hire minority talent. Two black executives were fired simply because they were trying to hire from HBCUs. That was one. And the other one was fired because she actually wrote a paper on bias in AI. What do you think about companies scared to hire from the HBCU world when it comes to technology hires?
So one of the things, I think those I can only think that companies like that are doomed. They're doomed for failure. I say that from a standpoint of, I know when I was coming up through the years, the minority population was supposed to, overtake the majority in the IT or in not just in IT in the country around the year 2000, that type of thing, right? So you had to, if you didn't reach out and you didn't try to get and diversity, inclusion, and when I say diversity, it's black, it's white, it's black, it's Latino. It's also diversity in culture, even within the races. I mean, everyone brings a different positive or different experience to the job. So I just think they're doing themselves a disservice. And I don't know. I mean, I think the way you can change that, you have to change that from within. And once you get inside as an exec, you have to make those connections with HR. And again, it goes back to what Clifford said and I said earlier. What's in it for them, right? Bringing in diverse talent will make you more money. I mean, I'm breaking it down to really base terms, but it's that return on investment. What am I getting from this? When your marketing department is looking at coming out with a new product, and they only work with those people that are like them or think like them, and I'm not just talking race. If it's all guys and we think like guys, and we're trying to make a product that's targeted to females, why do we have any females in the room, right? And that I think adding that and understanding that there's a return there, you're missing 50% of the market, or you're not going to be able to get that extra rich experience into your product. I think that's where those companies are going to they're not going to do as well as they could. And then going back to the folks that were let go, if that company has that type of mentality, again, there's not much you can do there except they're just watching kind of spin down, because having that diversity, to me, there's a huge return on investment.
Yep. So before Clifford answers that, to answer about the diversity aspect, it's experts have shown that a 1 percentage point change in diversity hires creates a 3 percentage point amount of money going to organizations. So in the IT world, they're saying from just changing 1%, you're looking at a $400 billion increase in revenue in the information technology world. So I mean that's definitely truth to what you're saying.
And companies that don't do it, they're just doing themselves a disservice with that return on investment.
Yep.
Yeah, there's one thing you really have to take the time and understand the organizational culture. What is the heartbeat of the organization? What are they going to, and I hate to say this, tolerate? We, as Black IT executives, have to, I don't want to say grease the wheels, but you have to act as an ambassador, because a lot of people are not familiar with people of color. They know what they see on TV or what the media portrays as something different, as less than, and that's a mindset. And people have fear of the unfamiliar, what they don't know, who they don't know. So I think, Anthony, you and I had a conversation many years ago about how we were perceived at certain organizations, at certain companies, by our white counterparts, and because they aren't used to people like us who, I hate to say you're smart, but you can do the job and you do it well, because of all that they've seen, all that they've grown up learning or knowing about this particular race of people, is that they're less than. So we have to take the time to get embedded, like Eric said, you have to work from within and get a comfort level has to be established and built. And then once the business side sees that, okay, there is an advantage to having this person in here, and there are other people that are just like you, that you can kind of lead them in that direction, to seeing, to identifying. You have to have a seat at the table.
Mm-hmm.
The technology departments always have to have a seat at the big table. And that's one of the things I've seen too little of in some employers that I've had in the past, is that if your IT exec is not at the big table, they can't wield decisions or impact decisions that touch the entire company.
Mm-hmm.
And that comes with hiring too. Hiring is an antiquated process when it comes to technology, especially in cybersecurity, because it's a fledgling field. I mean, it's been around for years, but it's still new. So when you're hiring people, there's a lot of position descriptions that are very antiquated. So you have to have some buy-in with that from the technology perspective, but also from the diversity perspective. We as technologists, also technologists of color, we have to go back into our communities and let children see us in these roles, in these positions, and understand, oh, okay, there's a guy who's doing that, because they aren't going to see it on TV. They aren't going to hear about it in the news. Some media outlets are getting better at it, but we have a responsibility where we have to go and speak to them and show them that these positions you can accomplish, you can get to these levels, you can do this in these big companies, in these big organizations.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I had a quick question. First of all, the stat that companies make more money through hiring diversity, that should be like the red, the big light there. It's like, hey, obviously this is a good idea. I don't understand why they don't do it more. And the other question I had was, is there a possibility that African Americans or Latinos, instead of trying to bring people up with them, they try to kind of meld in and stay within, just to kind of get through, so they don't does that make sense?
Yeah, there's a lot of that where you get into a room and you're like, well, I'm just going to be quiet and nobody knows me. Or you want to be the only one. You want to be the token. You enjoy being the only person of color because it gives you some status, whatever that might be, to that individual, as opposed to making a way for others to come in, and not just hiring for yourself, but also pointing it out to other departments and saying, hey, you should feel uncomfortable if you walk into a room and everybody looks the same.
And that's a great point. And it's interesting because one of the more, I think things are changing. I think we're starting to see, and I'll give you a couple of examples. So one real life example of me in an environment in the same type of situation that Clifford was just talking about. I look around the room, and the minority in the room was a white male. And I'm like, this is the first time in my career. This is only 5 years ago. It's the first time in my career where I'm in a room with women of color, and other African Americans. And they're in charge. They're the ones running the meeting. They're the ones, quote unquote, with the highest levels. I was in there I was one of the higher levels in there. And so I starting to see it from that standpoint, but also some of the larger IT companies, I won't give any names, I'm getting emails constantly from requesting, hey, we'll fly you to XYZ first class to come out and interview with us. And we've noticed that you haven't responded to any of our emails, so we're going to call you. And I'm like, what? Right? They know the value of that number that Anthony just gave, and they're beating my door down. I'm not calling them, right? And it's two companies in particular. There's others, but there's two that's been really, really, really persistent. And when I go back and I say, you know what? I just got, a larger share of work. I got a bigger budget. I can hire more people. Not right now. They're like, we'll call you in 6 months. And they will, right? They understand. They get it.
To let you guys know, you guys represent about 3 to 5% of the African American population when it comes to being a black IT executive. And that's very small.
Especially,
I wasn't going to tell you it was good.
especially as big as the IT market is.
Yeah.
For the industry, because everything's going digital.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
mean, we bought a washer and dryer, and it's like I get a text message when it's. Why do I can hear it? The dryer's done, right? I mean, and it's all gimmick. That's gimmick to me. But everything's it's like, oh, we got to go digital. Send a text message. Hey, whatever. The dryer's
Yeah.
done.
Here's a side note. I remember about 2 years ago, I was looking at an article Clifford had sent out. I always pay attention to different things he sends out. He doesn't even realize I'm looking at him, but I pay attention. Don't buy the something refrigerator because it's only going to last for 5 years. And he was talking about the screen on it. They were only going to support it for 5 years for that particular Android-based screen.
No way. I would never buy one. And it's so funny because the people who are they're asking me, "Oh yeah, Eric," I said, "Wouldn't touch it."
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember coming
touch your
home that
car.
day. I remember coming home that day and saying that. And saying, telling my
Yeah,
wife,
I can touch it.
we can't buy it.
Tesla. I'll wait for version 2.0.
There you go.
Yeah.
I know how 1.0s go. I've been doing this for 25, 30 years. I know how version 1.0 works.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
User acceptance test.
so here's a question. When you look back in your career, what are some things that have made you say, this is the wrong career? I shouldn't be in this. I'm never gonna get to a certain point. Or has there never been those type of things for you in your career? Let's start with that, Eric.
Eric, I can't say that it's ever been where I'm just like, I got to get out of this. I have said I need to change companies or like I was in a startup and it literally almost killed me. I mean, I remember distinctly one time, the accounting guy called me and another guy. We were working on something together for weeks on end, and he said, "Is this right? 360? It may not be the number. 360 hours, even though we weren't getting paid by the hour last month." And I'm like, "No, that sounds high." And then my buddy was sitting there. He said, "Remember July 4th that week?" I'm like, "Oh yeah." So no, that's right. And he was just like, "You guys worked that many hours?" I'm like, "Yeah." And then it hit me. I'm like, "This is not worth it. It's just not worth it." So I had those moments where it's like, this is not the right fit. I've left companies because of that. But as far as the career, like I said, when I started that back in high school, it's always been a joy. And then you just, like I said, you just have to slice and dice and figure out this is not the right situation. But career-wise, it was always been. So.
Okay. Clifford?
Yeah, I have a passion, a love for information security, helping people with it, sharing the information. It's cutting edge. It's always cutting edge. There's always something new. So when you hear about the major breaches on the news, I smile because my stock just went up a little bit more. But there have been situations, there have been organizations when politics get involved. In state government, I've been in some agencies that were very close to the political hotbed, and it makes for a nightmare situation when you're sitting there trying to make solid, financially sound decisions from an IT perspective, yet politics are directing the budget and the decisions. And it's like, well, that doesn't make any sense. And those are just times, like Eric mentioned, you need to look at the organization that you're in and look at transitioning. In higher ed, I'm not gonna say there's not politics involved, but it's a whole lot better with the way things move. I think in a higher ed group, now we cover everything. That I talked with a CISO who was at a major college, and then he left and went to work for a major corporation. And he said it is so much easier in the private sector company because you can dictate, when you put a rule or policy in place, it's going to be followed, period, because it touches the bottom line.
Mm-hmm.
Where you're in a government entity or a higher ed entity, you have a lot of other issues that you have to wiggle, and people higher up on the food chain can choose to ignore things if they desire. So it's not without its quirks, but I love this field. I love working in technology. So
for somebody who is for somebody who's coming out of fresh out of college or just got their certifications, how can they stand out and have companies notice them more than say they're another person applying for the same job?
That's the big thing. How do you separate yourself from the field? It's branding. You really have to work on what your brand is, and how you sell yourself. That's where communication comes in play. If you get a shot at the interview, you really have to focus on selling yourself and what experiences you have. I tell a lot of young people, join these organizations such as ISACA or InfraGard. Get out there among the professionals and learn what they are dealing with, what they are going through, and position yourself by doing additional training. One thing I tell them is when you're looking at a job, don't look at the salary as the bottom line. Look at the benefits package. What type of training do they offer? Will they allow me to get certifications? Will they pay for my certifications? That will make me more marketable or more beneficial to the organization. So there's a lot of other things that people have to consider. But yeah, it's important to make yourself stand out, and your experiences that you bring to the table are what make you different.
I agree 100%. And my son's actually in that mode now. I mean, he's starting to look for employment after school, and he was looking for an internship last summer, and it got shut down because of COVID, which is really disappointing for all of us because we wanted him to start to get that internship. But the thing that he did, and I didn't really realize how deeply he was doing this, but he took a Python class, and he has a real strong. He's a finance IT major. He has a real strong interest in the market. So he wrote this program that does something with stocks, and you type in something, I don't know. And he was playing with it on his own, and it came up in an interview, and they almost immediately stopped and said, basically, all right, we gotta have you, because he's in school. A lot of students go through these classes, but they don't apply it, or they don't. That shows passion. It was communication, and then you actually took your time on your own to do something that applies to this position or this industry, using IT in finance. And he said, Dad, they just all of a sudden it was just like, oh, okay, we're good. So I think that's experiences, as Cliff said, and communication, but showing that you have a passion about what that job is, and what you want to grow. You want to be innovative. You are intellectually intellectually curious. I want to learn more about the market, and don't be afraid to say, you know what, that's not something I worked on, but I saw that in school and it really piqued my interest. And if you can, I used to tell him, just pick one or two things about it that you read on the internet, because you already told him you haven't done it. But if you say, hey, I haven't done Java, but I know that, in comparison to Python, it's this and that. That sounds pretty cool. I might want to try that, right? So show passion about that. I do research around my craft. As someone who interviews people, those are the things I look for. I don't necessarily expect you to be, especially junior level, I don't expect you to be an expert. But I expect you to have a curiosity about the field that you're working on, right? Can I trust you to go learn this new tool? Can I trust you to go learn this new framework or this new security package or framework, right? or certification. Not, hey, I just need a job. That's not going to work. So I think that's where all of that comes into play.
Okay. With that said, guys, I want to thank you guys so much for actually coming on the Media and Society. But before we go, I like to always have our guest give a word of advice to the younger generation that's trying to pursue a career in the field we're talking about. In this case, information technology. When you look back at your life as a professional, what advice can you give from your 19 to 20-year-old self to now to some of the younger generation that's trying to go into IT?
I think we've covered a lot of it, so I don't want to repeat. But if I had to pick one thing, and I'd say this is something that we did not have as relevant as or as easy to do as we do now, and that's the brand. Build your brand, and that can manifest itself in many different ways, right? In LinkedIn, which is kind of static, but then also take advantage of some of the other tools like Twitter, right? And I'll admit, I have my professional Twitter with my professional picture and everything, and I haven't tweeted out stuff about the industry and things like that. But that's something that it's new for me, right? Because that social media for them, they tweet all the time, or they do all these Instagram and everything else. So make that part of your brand. Make that, so when people go look for you, they can find these things. And you tell them, hey, go look at my Twitter. I wrote articles about, or I wrote, comments or things about this. So building that whole brand thing, I think is different than it was back when we were coming up. It was more, phone calls and networking and string and cups, right? So that would be my number one, the branding.
Okay, Clifford?
Investing in yourself, time-wise. Each week, you should be spending 1 to 3 hours doing something offline. It could be related to work, it could not be. But read a book, do a LinkedIn learning course, watch TED Talks, do something that is making you more well-rounded to increase your brand, your brand value, and be very proactive with it and do it routinely. That you should always be investing in yourself to make yourself better suited for the next level, the next role.
Awesome. I want to thank you guys again for stopping by the Media and Society, where our audience tends to learn quite a bit from our guest. And I really appreciate having both you, Eric, and Clifford. And thanks again, Ken, for coming by tonight. You can actually view this on Facebook and YouTube. And if you want to reach us, you can reach us at KA Middle Society for Facebook. And on YouTube, you can reach us at The Media Society. Thank you so much. We're out.